One of my favorite parts of wood turning is segmented turning. And one of the things I like best about it is trying to design a unique, original feature ring. A little difficult to do. There are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of turners out there doing segmented turning. So coming up with something unique, probably not going to happen. But anyway, I've come up with this right now. I've got diagonal slices going two different directions, separated by a vertical piece, and then carrying on around the bowl. Now I want to make each of these pieces that are in the diagonals 3/16 of an inch thick. So the first thing I need to do is come up with some strips that I can cut into these diagonals. Let's take a look at that first. I have my strips of wood cut now. I put them through the drum sander to make sure they're nice and smooth, ready to go. They're right at 3/16 of an inch. I need 4 strips of dark wood and 3 strips of light wood for each of the blocks that I'm going to make. Now, I've got walnut for the dark wood, birch for the light wood. Some of the walnut had a severe knot in it, so I've made sure that each of those pieces is stacked together. I'm going to have to cut that out. It's going to be scrap, and I don't want to have to use scrap out of both pieces. I'll just lose more that way. So now I'm going to glue these together, and I'll be right back.
Now I will use the jointer to clean up one edge. The other edge is cleaned up with the table saw.
Well, I've got my strips glued together now. I think they look all right. Not too bad anyway. So now I'm going to do a little figuring, find out exactly how I'm going to go about cutting these, and then I'm going to come back and show you. Give me just a moment. I've cut one of the rectangles from the drawing that I made, and it's not to scale. These strips are slightly wider than the ones on the paper. That was done intentionally. I wasn't trying to make it to scale. Anyway, if I take and make a 45-degree angle from this side across to the center of the center strip, I'll end up with a square, and I don't want a square. You might be able to tell that this dimension is slightly greater than this dimension. So to do that, I want to come from the junction on the end of the walnut and the birch, right on that corner, and draw a 45-degree line. Right there. Now I want to draw a 90-degree line off of this one, which is the same as drawing 45 degrees from this side in this way. Not sure if the camera's going to pick this up. I've probably got everything in the way. Now another 45-degree line from that corner right here. and one joining back up to that point. And that gives me the rectangle, which is inside here. Now what I want to do is go along and draw another one. And I want to start this one from down here instead of up on this face. So I'm going to come across here a good 1/4 of an inch. So I have space between the two lines to cut this out, probably on the bandsaw. Now I'm going to use the junction that this line has on this walnut and this birch and draw 90 degrees from that line, which is 45 from this face. And 45 degrees from this corner. Now I'll come up to this point right here from this face. And that gives me another rectangle right there. Now, if you take a look at this, if I line this one up with this rectangle, you can see that this little triangular area matches up with what this is. And if you can visualize this being sanded smooth and this being cut so that this side matches that, it'll have to kind of swing around, you'll see that this little triangle area will match up just the way this one does. And then there will be a little strip put between them, a little spacer. So that's my next step, is to cut these apart. I'm going to first go along and draw a whole bunch more of these rectangles, and then I'll be back to show you my next step.
My fingers are just as precious to me as I'm sure yours are to you. So when I cut small pieces on the bandsaw, I like to use a hand screw or some other method to hold them rather than using my fingers.
Well, I used the bandsaw. I got all these pieces cut. Now I'm going to take them to the disc sander and straighten them up, square them up, get them to the dimension that I want. I've got the disc sander table so that it's square to the disc, and I've put a fence on, also running square to the disc in the other direction. So I'm going to first put this piece with a long dimension against the disc and sand it just by eye, very carefully, to get it straight along the line that I've drawn. Then I'm going to put that side against the fence and run it up against the disc until I'm up to there. At that point, I will use an adjustment to make sure that I get the same thickness in both directions on all the pieces. But instead of trying to explain the whole thing, why don't we just go take a look and I'll show you what I'm going to do. Now I intend to take this against the disc until it's right up to that line. Then I'll put that now flat square edge against the fence and drive it up against the disc until I hit that line. I have an adjustable piece here. There's an adjustment. When I loosen this piece can slide up and down. I've adjusted it so that now when this piece hits the edge of this sled, it will always give me the same size. I will put one of these pieces against there and drive it up against the moving sanding disc until it stops. When I've completed all of these in this dimension, I'll be able to turn it this way and have the same distance for this one. So I'm going to do all of them in this dimension, then I will turn them, readjust it, and do it this way. Let's take a look at a couple of these. Now with all the pieces sanded and put in the position they're going to be in, you can see the design, and I've cut some small pieces of walnut to fit in between them. So I'm going to glue these up in pairs now. I will glue up these two with a walnut strip in between them, and the next two again with walnut in between them. Then I will finish cutting them to the angles I need and glue them up later. I will show you the step by step as I go along. So now I'm going to glue all of these pairs up and I'll be back. I have the pieces glued together with that chunk of walnut in between, and now I want to make sure that one side is perfectly flat. To do that, I'm using 150 grit sandpaper that's glued onto a sheet of 1/4 inch glass. It's very flat. To make sure this is flat, I'll just draw some light lines, run it across this sandpaper. Once those lines are gone, I'll know it's really flat. And it's all ready to go. So I'll do the same thing with all the rest of them, and then I'll be back for the next step. I have this side nice and flat now. I know that the disc is square to this fence. And I know that these two sides are parallel. So if I run this side against the fence and butt it up against the running disc, I'll be able to get a square corner here. I've drawn lines, and I'm going to just touch this up until they just disappear. That's the step I'm going to take now. Now I will continue that process with all of the other pieces, and then I'll be back. I'm going to go back to this push stick. I've got the stop set. I'm going to put this piece in here, push it up until the stop hits the side of the sled, and that should be right. Let's give it a test and see how this works. Just have a little bit of lines there. I'm just going to reset this stop and then give it another try. And that's looking real good. I'm just going to do all the rest of them and I'll be back again. Now I will use the disc sander to do the same thing on this face, because I want this face and this one to be perfectly parallel. And again, I need to adjust this stop just a little bit and give it another try. And after a couple more adjustments, I've got those faces nice and parallel. Now I'll do the rest of the pieces. Alright, the sanding is finished. Each of these is going to be one of the segments in a 16 segment ring. Now I have to take this over to the table saw, use the Wedgie sled to make the angles. And if this is the front, the outside, I'm going to put an angle here and here on each one of them. Let's go over to the table saw and take a look at how that's done now. What you're looking at here is the Wedgie sled. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this. I'm going to put a link in the description box below the video so you can look up Jerry Bennett's channel. He designed this. I think it's wonderful. It sure saves a lot of time making the segments, but better that he'd explain the whole thing. The short version is I've marked a line on what I want to be the exterior of the bowl segment. I'm going to put it against this side of the fence, put it up against the stop block, and I have it set so that it will cut right on the corner. Then I'm going to use this just to hold it in place so it doesn't move when I push it through the blade. So I'll do a few of these. Then I'm going to take them, turn them around, put them on this one up against the fence, and take the other side of the segment off. Now my next step is to take the segment that's being cut here, flip it around, put it against the stop on this side, hold it again, and push it through the blade, cutting this angle. Well, that went really well. That Wedgie sled is awesome. Thank you, Jerry Bennett, wherever you are, for designing that and letting us have the plans. It's awesome. There's no light at all through any of these between the segments. So I'm real happy with this. I'm going to glue it up and I'll come right back to show you what it looks like. Well, there you are. Is it perfect? No. Gord, nothing's ever perfect. It's 12.5 inches in diameter, 3/4 of an inch thick, and I'm quite pleased with it. I think it's going to look good once I put it into a segmented turning of some kind. I still have to figure out what I'm going to put it into, a vessel, a bowl, I don't know yet. But that's what today was about, just showing you how I put this ring together. I hope you enjoyed that, maybe give you some ideas on what to do in designing one of your own. Thank you for joining me. I hope you had a good time. I know I did. Enjoy your day, have a good time in your shop, and be safe. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that, and click the like button if you enjoyed this. Thanks for stopping in. Take care now.